Once again, we welcome you to Moving Forward with Young Voices. Hey, we're happy to welcome Lora Karch back to the program. Lora, I know this is not your first time visiting with me, but for some people who are hearing you for the first time, tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi. Well, as you said, my name is Lora Karch. I'm a senior contributor at Young Voices, and my work mainly focuses on the geopolitics of the Middle East and U.S. foreign policy in the region.
And we're going to talk today about Syria, which I admitted to you before we went on the air. I've kind of lost track of the plot of what happened there. Last I heard, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad had been deposed. I know there were questions. Was he dead? Was he alive? Some of those questions apparently still remain, but there is a new regime in Syria. And you have an article here in nationalinterest.org that asks the question, should the West legitimize the new Syria? Set the stage for me as far as who is in power right now, and what does this mean for a country like Syria that just went through so many years of civil war?
Right. So the short answer to my article title is no. And Syria at this point right now just celebrated its anniversary of toppling Assad. So this is perfect timing. It was yesterday, and there were huge celebrations throughout the country. The current interim president, however, has a very sketchy past, and that's an understatement. He is, in my opinion, is not was the head of the terrorist group HTS, or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who had a stronghold and still has a stronghold in Idlib, Syria right now. And it's basically where the extremist ideology stemmed from that area during the Syrian civil war that began in 2011. So it's been a very long decade, almost decade and a half now. And so far, the interim president, he's rebranded his name. His What I call him is Mohammed al-Jolani, which was his nom de guerre, his war name. And now they kind of rebranded him to Ahmed al-Shara. And he's been promising a new era, rights for all, democracy. But one of the first statutes he put in place was there's not going to be a democratic election until 5 years from now, at least.
Oh,
So that was the first red flag. Um, and he can make as many promises as he wants. He recently was invited to the White House, which, in my opinion, was what kind of legitimized his movement, which, in my opinion, holds a lot of risks for the US to be associated with this guy in the first place. But going into that, the history of U.S.-Syria relations, we literally went from complete isolation, no diplomacy, to heavy sanctioning during Assad, and now we're cautiously re-engaging with the new government. So cautious optimism has been the theme since last year, in my opinion, and I disagree with it because I feel he's getting zero accountability for his past. This guy really committed terrorism. I mean, long story short, he's a terrorist. And I think the US and the West, the greater West, is having a quiet legitimization now of the new Syria because we are able to, these relations are able to get us what we want, in our interests, unfortunately. And, they're framing it as a new path forward for the US-Syria relations. And, we have a new ally in the Middle East. And, maybe in the future, it'll be a new Israeli ally as well. The Abraham Accords have been bounced around here and there. Rumors saying that he's going to sign them soon, things like that. So there's definitely a lot of moving parts right now. But I do want to add that I recently Googled, what are the headlines, just to see what the mainstream media is saying about it, and everyone, not everyone, but the majority is saying that it's been a good transition, given the context of everything. But then I went ahead and asked Google AI, what's the current state of Syria? And even Google AI is now saying, they're still in a state of humanitarian ruin, the economy
mm.
is really bad, and they mention the attacks of government-related forces on minorities, such as the Druze that we saw in March, such as I'm so sorry, the minorities, other minorities in the region that are just, suffering at this point. The Alawites, sorry, that's what it was. Because long story short, Bashar al-Assad was an Alawite, and so now the new government's coming in and saying we need to terminate the Alawite population, basically. And so instead of recognizing this as ethnic cleansing, the West is just calling it a blip in, the transition. And I think we need to bring more attention to this.
I so appreciate individuals like you who pay attention to and research and connect all the dots. I only have so much bandwidth on a given day, and it's very hard to keep track, especially in the Middle East where there seems to be so much commotion. Um, I'm blown away by uh, how much devastation took place for such a long time in Syria. And I'm not trying to pick sides here. I'm not, I, I'm not trying to determine who was right, but I'm curious, how does it benefit the U.S. to embrace this new leader? I'm just wondering what is the justification on the part of the U.S. Department of State to invite him to come talk with us and so forth? What's in it for us in their eyes?
So the visit benefits the US from Trump's eyes in that, one, we get whatever we want done in Syria from now on, including our new US base that we are building. We did have 8 unofficial bases during the war, and now it's down to one. But this one it's going to be a real, allied base. And I think Trump does hope to get the Syrian membership in some sort of peace deal with Israel. I think that's being floated around. Jolani has said, it's too soon. There's no real trust, on Netanyahu's side as well, which it makes complete sense because we're dealing with terrorists here. But it would be a huge ROI, let's say, if Trump can get Syria to at least, have a side deal, something like the Abraham Accords. Another one is oil. I don't think that interest has gone away because right now our unofficial base in the north is quite literally around the oil bases near the
Mm.
Chesapeake Bay. And honestly,
That
I
actually
don't.
was the next question I wanted to ask you was why was the U.S. involved in the first place? But I think you just gave me a pretty good idea of the interests that they wanted to protect. Tell me this though. You mentioned in your article that at one time there was a $10 million bounty placed on Shara's head. Um, I guess that's just all water under the bridge as far as the diplomatic connections are concerned.
Well, as of now, I don't think we're hearing a lot about it, but there have been assassination attempts by ISIS militants themselves because of how mad they are about Shaddad making the connection with the West. Some of them think he's bowing down to Western interests. He's a puppet for Trump, he's a puppet for Israel, things like that. And that's really what we're not hearing right now is that there is internal um, challenges right now in between the same group that is ruling the country. So people have argued he doesn't have full control over the entire country, which we do see the SDF struggling with their autonomy in the north. We see the Druze wanting their own enclave in the south, and it's all it's a wait and see. It's a waiting game. And I think, I personally do predict, God forbid, he might get assassinated and then we're going to have to deal with another power vacuum and then maybe another form of extremists coming up. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Definitely, this provokes some sympathy for the Syrian people. But as you point out in your article, if Syria's new regime wants a chance to prove itself, we'll be able to tell by its actions more so than whatever speeches are being made at the moment.
Exactly.
Again, we are talking with Lora Karch. She is a Middle East history and peace fellow with Young Voices. And Laura, where can people follow you? Where can they find you on social media?
So I'm on Twitter. Today it's known as X at my first and last name, Lora Karch, and launching a Substack soon. And yeah,
Well, I'll be
thank you.
watching for your Substack. And again, this is one of those incredibly complicated situations. Thank you to you and to the others like you who keep track of it and keep us informed. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome back to Moving Forward with Young Voices. Hey, we're happy to welcome Kyle Moran back to the program. Kyle, good to see you once again. I know this isn't your first time on the program, but for the sake of those hearing you for the first time, give us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, and who you are.
Sure. So I'm senior contributor with Young Voices. I write mostly on international relations, international security, economics, and AI.
And I'm looking at an article that you had published in the Blaze. Boy, this seems like a timely one, too. If conservatives will not defend capitalism, who will? Now, I think we're specifically talking about the new mayor-elect in New York City, Mondami. Is he kind of the background for this defense of capitalism, seeing as he's an avowed socialist?
To an extent, some of this stems from, I mean, obviously in the aftermath of his election, a lot of right of center conservatives were trying to make the case that these people voting for Mandani have it all backwards, they have it all wrong. And a lot of them made a number of very unfortunate points that I think come come off as dismissive of real things that people are going through in the country. And so New York City has to be recognized as being an enclave of some of the most extreme social liberalism in the country. This is not indicative of the country as a whole. Nevertheless, a lot of the situations, economically speaking, at least in New York, are being felt through the country. So I wrote this article mostly as a pushback to others on the right who have been arguing some very um, off-putting messages. In particular, there was a slew of them in about a week. Donald Trump was interviewed by Laura Ingraham on Fox News, in which he said we need H-1B visa programs to continue, which I actually agree. I don't want to get rid of them entirely by any means, but he said that we need them because we don't have talented people in the country. I mean, talk about a messaging issue. I couldn't have come up with a worse defense if I tried of the program. Same thing in a few days after or a few days before, Ben Shapiro was discussing the cost of living crisis in the country and basically said, if you can't afford to live in certain places, then it's because you don't deserve it. This has never been the American ethos. And he tried to pivot to American history, where we do sort of move around to where economic opportunity is. The issue there being the places with the most economic opportunity in this country are also the most expensive. It used to be, what he was talking about in the past was, it used to be, if you needed economic opportunity, you could head out west. You could start your own town, for God's sake. I mean, he was going way back there. This is not the case today. A lot of jobs are in major cities. A lot of jobs are in New York City or in Boston, stuff like that. So when young people are trying to get established in some of these fields and they're looking at unbelievable housing costs, telling them, well, they don't deserve to live there is it should come as no surprise that a lot of them are not exactly enthusiastic about such a system.
No, actually, I think you're making a very good case for a blind spot that exists within a lot of conservatives' worldview. And I've been guilty of this as well. So talk to me a little bit about what needs to happen in terms of if for instance Trump and the conservatives who are on board with him, if they wish to defend capitalism, how can they do it in a less detached way, maybe? Do they
Yeah,
need to show more sympathy for you know for basically the different strata of life that just comes out of circumstance and other things?
part of it is that what a lot of them were defending is not capitalism.
Mm.
I mean, a lot of this extremely restrictive zoning laws, no genuine capitalist is going to be in defense of this. And we have seen in different parts of the country, zoning laws have played a huge role in the cost of living. So actually addressing this issue is by no means socialist. I think the economic policies that people like Mandani would be proposing would make this worse. Rent control may help an individual have their rent stop going up. It doesn't really bring it down, and it certainly isn't going to build more housing stock. It's going to discourage that from happening. So that's not a serious solution. There are serious solutions on the right, But let me tell you, if you're a young person trying to get established in one of these cities and you hear one side telling you we're going to make this affordable and the other side telling you you don't deserve to live there, guess who you're voting for?
No, that's actually, that makes a lot of sense. And I have to say, I'm very proud of you for including the observation in your article that hey, even Marjorie Taylor Greene, the representative from Georgia, is seeing, this disconnect and calling it for what it is. And I mean, I know she's off-putting to some people, but let's give credit where credit's due. She's seeing it, at least she's seeing this correctly.
I did not have writing an article defending Marjorie Taylor Greene on my 2025 bingo card, but here we are. It really is something to be taking note of. I mean, she has been crazy on so many issues, but even the stop clock is right twice a day, and she is one of the few who are actually speaking up about this. I mean, it's not a partisan issue at this point. Like the housing affordability, as well as she was been very vocal on healthcare. I mean, I will say what nobody on the right has been willing to say for a long time, which is that the GOP has been brain dead on healthcare for over a decade at this point, 2 decades almost. Um, and it has sort of been okay because the system has kind of held together, but we're seeing that continue to fracture with every passing year. And so right now, all we're doing is just throwing more subsidies at it and saying maybe enough band-aids on this thing will hold it all together. I don't think it's gonna, and I think we are starting to see some pretty serious fractures on this. Healthcare in this country never used to be like that, even until 10 years ago. I mean, people had to pay for it, obviously, and it was high quality. That's a good trade-off. But I mean, when you're looking at some of these plans where individuals are paying, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Some people are paying over $1,000 a month for plans that aren't even that good. Again, the messaging is just totally non-existent from the right on this. So if you go online and you search for politicians talking about bringing down healthcare, who are you going to stumble on? You're going to stumble on AOC. You're going to stumble on Zoran Mamdani. You're not going to stumble on people in the GOP because they're not talking about it. And the one person who is talking about it resigned.
Wow. And the crazy thing too, I mean, as you're describing, the people who've stood up and, we're going to stand up for the little guy. Look, Bernie Sanders with his wild hair was pretty easy to dismiss, but if he's speaking a message that resonates, especially with young people about the world is not affordable and we're going to do something about it, I agree. They have some incentive. What do you see as the best way forward for conservatives to actually stake out some moral high ground on this rather than live up to the stereotype of the, indifferent capitalist?
Recognize that there is a problem. Uh, this is always a good first step. Right now, he's going to be delivering a message in, I believe, Pennsylvania later on today. We'll see what he has to say. Perhaps he does some good stuff on this, perhaps not. We will see. I'm not going to go out on predictions here, but he has been quadrupling down on the idea that that affordability is a Democrat hoax. And again, I mean, the point that I'm just gonna I'm gonna beat a dead horse on here is when one side is saying yes, this is a problem, and the other side is saying it's imagined. Like that's not a good situation to be in.
No, especially when the side that is acknowledging, yes, it's a problem, has a solution that may actually be worse than the problem.
Amen. Amen.
But you don't learn that until later, right?
Indeed.
Again, we are talking with Kyle Moran. He is a contributor with Young Voices. Kyle, where can people follow you? Where can they find you on social media?
Sure. I'm on X at Kyle P. Moran, and you can find all of my articles over on Young Voices website.
All right. All the best to you, and congratulations on that very unexpected addition to your things to do in 2025. I'm sure we'll have some exciting things to talk about next year.
Thank you very much for having me, Bryan.
Welcome back to Moving Forward with Young Voices. We are happy to welcome Iulia Lupse back to the program. Iulia, great to see you once again. For people meeting you for the first time, would you mind introducing yourself to us?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for having me. I'm Iulia. I'm a freelance journalist covering a really wide range of topics, everything from healthcare to foreign policy to energy. And I'm also the founder of INA Communication Solutions, where I help clients with messaging, editorial strategy, and any other communication need.
Well, I've got an article from of yours from counterpunch.org, why Mark Cuban is wrong about pharmacy benefit managers. Now, I have heard a lot of talk lately, actually, about pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, as we'll call them, and a lot of it has I think been around. They actually do a pretty good job of saving money for customers of large, healthcare concerns. But I didn't know that Mark Cuban had weighed in on this. Bring me up to speed. What exactly did he say that has caught your attention here?
Yeah, so Mark Cuban recently went on CNBC and basically said that PBMs are the only reason why drug prices are so high, that they're these shadowy middlemen inflating costs and ripping people off. So his argument is basically that PBMs are these opaque middlemen who inflate prices, collude with insurance, rip employers off. And he thinks that PBMs are the ones that raise list prices to increase their rebate cuts, and that the whole model is fundamentally broken. So that's essentially what he's arguing, and I get why that message lands. He's presenting a very clean and emotionally satisfying villain, but the problem is it's not how the drug pricing system works. If you actually follow the flow of money, PBMs don't set the prices, manufacturers do. And then PBMs come in later and negotiate those prices down. So Cuban's framing flips the order of operations.
And I guess this is really important that we understand. If you could just kind of walk us through what does a PBM do in the course of their day's work?
Yeah, so essentially, the easiest way to think of what a PBM does, they're a negotiator in the middle of a very messy supply chain. So drug manufacturers set the list price, and that's important because the list price is where the inflation starts. Pharmacies dispense the drugs, and the employers and insurance try not to get crushed by these skyrocketing costs. And PBMs sit in between these players and go say to the manufacturers, "Hey, if you want access to our formulary, which covers millions of patients, you need to give us a discount." So PBMs manage these formularies, they negotiate rebates, encourage generic use, and process claims in real time. So they're not this mysterious wizard behind the curtain. They're really the only entity in the chain whose incentives actually push downward on the price.
Wow. I don't think that well, I know for a fact I've never had to deal with, a PBM, but I'm sure when I go to the pharmacy, I probably feel the impact of what they're doing, depending on which health plan I belong to. So, how did Mark Cuban get caught up in this discussion, and how did he miss, the mark?
Well, first, so it's very important to point out that Cuban runs a company called Cost Plus, that basically profits by positioning PBMs as the enemy. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's wrong about everything, but his narrative is too simplistic for how complicated the system really is. Um, and PBMs really do move the needle. For example, in 2024 alone, drug makers increased list prices on, I believe it was something like 775 brand name drugs. And these new drugs were launching with median prices around $300,000 a year, which was about one third higher than the previous year. This year, too, we saw the same with 281 brand price changes, of which 271 were increases. So yeah, these hikes happen long before a PBM or insurance even becomes part of the conversation. So obviously for Mark Cuban, it's his own company. So he's going on a little marketing spree. But yeah, you also see the benefits of that PBMs bring. For example, studies consistently show that PBMs reduce spending by roughly 40 to 50% compared to what an unmanaged market would look like. So that's about $1,000 in annual savings at least per patient. And without them, employers and insurance would end up paying something much closer to the list price.
This is so fascinating, and for anyone who takes prescription drugs, on a regular basis, maybe they thought this through. But I think for a lot of people, the idea of what it takes to get the drugs to their pharmacy where they can then purchase them, and to do it at a price that is hopefully competitive. This is all going on in the background, and I think most of us are kind of blissfully unaware of the negotiations that take place.
Yeah.
Overall, would you say that PBMs bring a greater net good than opaqueness?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, even I think one of the most overlooked points too is that generics, for example, weren't always the default. Before PBMs, brand drugs dominated and generics were treated like second tier products. Today, 9 out of 10 prescriptions are filled in the US are generic, which this is also one of the only areas in American healthcare where we see prices reliably fall over time. Um, so yeah, I think that getting rid of them would get rid of a very important player, and technically the only player today that does something in negotiating these prices down.
I like that you point out too that as far as people who complain, well, this isn't transparent enough. When they're negotiating, that's they have to have some opacity, as you point out. Otherwise, if everything was just revealed right out there at first, that would weaken their pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't go into a negotiation telling the other person exactly what to expect coming out of it.
I'm going to fold at this price.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
We know exactly where to go. So, overall, are PBMs are they viewed by the actual consumers, the customers, as a positive thing, or is it easy for Mark Cuban and those with him to plant these seeds of doubt? And I'm just wondering what public sentiment seems to reflect.
So the problem is that they're an easy target because they're complicated and pretty invisible. People don't exactly know what they do. Um, and then and also they're kind of an easy scapegoat for politician as well. They don't want to take on the pharmaceutical manufacturers because the industry has enormous lobbying power and controls a lot of the narrative around innovation and research. So that's why, yes, PBMs have become a scapegoat, and it's easy to present them as such to the public. So there's not really the public opinion surrounding PBMs is not so great, but that's why I think it's very important for people to actually understand what they do, and how they can be used to benefit them.
And for people who do want to dig in and get a better understanding without actually becoming a pharmacist or working as a PBM, are there good resources that people can go to better understand that system, or for that matter, if they're looking for transparency in what they're paying for their prescriptions, is that transparency available generally?
Yeah, so it actually is because our employers already have choices. They can choose full pass-through PBM contracts where every rebate and fee is disclosed. Many still intentionally choose traditional models because confidentiality allows for deeper discounts. So the market already offers these transparency options. It's not like PBMs are hiding something that employers can't buy if they want it.
So is there what does the future look like then for those who want to see affordable prescription prices? I mean, look, I know the research and the testing is extremely expensive, but is there any hope that we can move towards more affordable drug prices, or is it going to just be fertile ground for the Mark Cubans who kind of want to you know elbow their way into the market?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be fertile ground for people like Mark Cuban. But I think what the Trump administration is doing right now, which is kind of what PBMs are doing, he's negotiating directly with manufacturers, striking most favored nation pricing deals with companies like Eli Lilly, and forcing drug makers to bring U.S. prices closer to what they charge abroad. So I think there is hope on the horizon.
Again, we are visiting with Iulia Lupse. She is a Young Voices contributor. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on X at Iulia L 27 and on Substack at Unfiltered with Yulia.